Don't miss the awesome Naruto stories my sister creates. Her last channel was hacked, so to stay in the loop, please subscribe to her new channel. It would mean a lot to her, and you won't regret it. Dear Naruto Lemon fans, I'm thrilled to invite all of you to my Boosty channel, where you can enjoy exclusive Naruto Lemon scenes in a comfortable and supportive community. Choose from various subscription tiers, from Mini Lemon to God Lemon, and gain access to unique content tailored just for our fans. Plus, subscribers to over Naruto Lemon and God Lemon will receive special mentions in my videos. Support my channel and dive deeper into the world of Naruto today. Dare! My story. Female Naruto x Sasuke. Chapter 1, A New Beginning. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the Hokage's office. Naruto sat at his desk, his hands still gripping a large stack of papers. The weight of his responsibilities as the 7th Hokage often felt overwhelming, but today, his thoughts were elsewhere. He absent-mindedly glanced out the window at the bustling Hidden Leaf village below, its streets alive with people going about their daily lives. The village, once filled with hostility toward him, now brimmed with warmth and familiarity. Naruto had finally achieved the dream he'd chased for years. He was the Hokage. But for all the success, something was still missing. His heart longed for something he couldn't put into words. There were still days when he felt the ache of loneliness that had been with him since childhood, the absence of his parents. He often wondered what it would have been like if they'd been there with him, to witness the man he had become. Naruto sighed, pushing the papers aside. His hand brushed against something that caught his attention, an old, dusty envelope lying at the corner of the desk. It wasn't one of the regular letters from the village's citizens or allies. This envelope had a familiar, swirling red pattern, something that made his heart skip a beat. The seal on the back of the envelope was unmistakable, it was the Uzumaki clan seal. For a moment, Naruto froze, his breath catching in his throat. He carefully picked it up, the weight of it feeling heavier than any mission he had ever taken on. With trembling hands, he broke the seal and slowly unfolded the yellowed paper inside. It was a letter. The handwriting was neat but had a certain flow to it that felt like it came from someone who knew exactly what they wanted to say. He recognized the style instantly, his mother's. Kushina Uzumaki. Dear Naruto, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means I'm no longer there with you, but I want you to know something very important. Naruto's heart pounded as he read the words. His mother. Her words, her love, after all these years. He had always wondered if she ever thought of him in the same way he had thought of her. His eyes quickly moved over the text, reading faster now, desperate to hear her voice again. I've watched you grow from afar, and I am so proud of you. I know that life has been hard for you, but I also know that you're strong, stronger than anyone could ever imagine. I only wish I could have been there to see you become the man you are today, to watch you live the life you deserve. Naruto blinked, wiping at his eyes. He hadn't realized tears were already streaming down his face. He hadn't known how much he had needed this, her love, her approval. I know that you have suffered, that there are pieces of your past that still haunt you. I regret not being there for you when you needed me most. But what I want you to know is this, you are not alone, Naruto. You never have been. You have the strength of the Uzumaki bloodline within you, and you have the love of a mother who will always be with you in your heart. Naruto swallowed hard, his throat tight. The words were a balm to the wounds he hadn't realized were still fresh. I want you to find happiness, Naruto. Not just in being Hokage, but in your heart, in your life. I know you've been lonely, and I know you've wondered about the love that was missing from your life. Please, find someone who will cherish you for who you are, someone who will stand by your side, no matter what. It's okay to be happy, my son. You deserve it. Naruto's hands began to shake, and he put the letter down on his desk, leaning back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. The warmth of her words was overwhelming, and the emptiness in his heart, the loneliness that had plagued him for years, felt like it was finally being acknowledged. He had spent so many years focusing on becoming the Hokage, protecting the village, making up for the years he felt were stolen from him. But now, with his mother's words in his hands, he realized something that struck him deep within his soul: he had never truly allowed himself to live. He had been too afraid, too focused on the future, to take the time to find happiness in his own heart. Naruto glanced back at the letter. There was more. I know you've always wondered about your father, and I've never been able to give you the answers you've needed. But I hope you'll know this: your father was a great man. I loved him deeply, and he loved you with everything he had. You're both his legacy, and I am proud of you beyond words. The letter continued, filled with advice and encouragement, but it was the final sentence that stuck with him the most. Please, Naruto, live your life for yourself. Find the love and joy you deserve. Naruto held the letter tightly, his heart racing. His mother had spoken of finding love, but he had never truly considered what that meant. Not for him. Not with all the responsibilities he had carried as Hokage. He had always told himself that love was a distraction, that his purpose was to protect the village, to serve as a pillar of strength for everyone. But maybe he had been wrong. Maybe it was time for him to live his own life. Later that evening, as the night settled over the village, Naruto found himself at Ichiraku Ramen. The warm, savory aroma of his favorite food filled the air, but he wasn't really hungry. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the words from his mother's letter. As he slurped a bowl of ramen absent-mindedly, the door to the stand opened, and a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. Hey, Naruto. You're still working this late? It was Sakura, her bright pink hair framing her face as she walked in, a concerned look on her face. Naruto looked up, offering her a weak smile. Yeah. Just got some paperwork to go through. Sakura raised an eyebrow but didn't press him further. She had known Naruto long enough to tell when something was on his mind. What's got you all serious today? Usually, you're slurping down ramen and grinning like a fool, she teased, sitting down beside him. Did something happen? Naruto hesitated for a moment, his gaze drifting to the letter still in his hand. He had only shared bits and pieces of his childhood with her, about being an orphan, about growing up alone. He had never gone into detail about how much he longed for the family he never had. I found something today, he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. Sakura looked at him, her eyes softening. What did you find? A letter, from my mom, Naruto replied, the words heavy on his tongue. She wrote it before she died. I didn't know it existed. She told me I deserve to be happy. Sakura's eyes widened, and she reached out to place a comforting hand on his. Naruto. I don't know what to do with it, Naruto admitted, looking down at the letter again. She told me to find love. To stop being afraid of it. But I've spent so long just fighting, just surviving. I don't know how to live for myself. I don't know if I even deserve it. Sakura squeezed his hand, her voice gentle but firm. You deserve everything, Naruto. You've always been there for others, always fighting for everyone's happiness. You've earned the right to find your own. Naruto looked up at her, his blue eyes searching hers. Do you really think so? I know so, she said, smiling warmly. And you're not alone. You have all of us. But if your mom wants you to find happiness, maybe it's time to start thinking about what you want. About what you deserve. Naruto's gaze turned inward, a storm of emotions swirling within him. It was true. He had always put others first. He had always focused on protecting everyone, but in doing so, he had never let himself live fully. Maybe it was time for a change. "Thanks, Sakura," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll think about it. Maybe it's time to start living for myself." Sakura smiled softly. "Take your time, Naruto. But don't wait too long." Naruto nodded, a sense of determination settling in his chest. He had a new goal now, not just to protect the village, but to find happiness for himself. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of hope. He wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready to open his heart to love. Chapter 2, A Mother's Love. The night was unusually quiet in the Hidden Leaf Village. The only sounds were the gentle rustling of the trees and the distant chirping of crickets. Inside the Hokage's residence, Naruto lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts were far from the village's politics or the paperwork he had yet to finish. His mind was consumed with the letter from his mother, Kushina Uzumaki, that he had read earlier that day. She had written it so long ago, but it felt like she was speaking to him from the present. Her words were like a balm to the deep ache that had been in his chest for as long as he could remember. She had expressed pride in him, a love that transcended time and space. That love was something Naruto had always yearned for, but hearing it from her, feeling it as if she were with him in that moment, was something he never thought would happen. He closed his eyes, the weight of exhaustion finally catching up to him. But even in sleep, his heart remained restless, as if it couldn't fully grasp the magnitude of the letter, or the fact that his mother had expressed so much love and hope for him, even from beyond the grave. The world around him blurred into darkness as sleep claimed him, and it was then that the dream began. He was standing in a field of vibrant flowers, the colors swirling in a gentle breeze. The air smelled of sweet blossoms and the warmth of the sun. It was peaceful, almost too perfect. Naruto squinted into the distance, trying to make sense of his surroundings. "Where am I?" he murmured to himself. And then he heard a soft, familiar voice. "Naruto." Naruto whipped around, his heart racing. He knew that voice. It was his mother's. His chest tightened as his eyes landed on a figure standing before him, bathed in soft sunlight. Kushina Uzumaki stood there, smiling at him with a warmth that instantly filled his heart. "Mom?" His voice was a whisper, barely audible, but it carried all the disbelief and longing he had felt for years. "Yes, it's me, Naruto," Kushina said gently, her smile never faltering. She reached out to him, her hands glowing faintly as if she were made of light. "I know it's strange, but this is a part of me that will always be with you. You'll always have me in your heart, even if you can't see me." Naruto's throat tightened as he took a hesitant step forward. His hand trembled as he reached out to touch her. The sensation was different from anything he'd ever felt, like touching something soft, like warmth spreading from his fingertips, but it wasn't tangible. It was an essence, a bond that connected them in ways words couldn't describe. "Mom." Naruto choked out. He had so many things to say, questions, apologies, confessions, but the words refused to leave his lips. He didn't know where to start. Kushina's eyes softened, sensing his inner turmoil. "I know you have so many questions, Naruto. And I know you've been carrying a lot of weight on your shoulders. But I'm proud of you. So incredibly proud of everything you've become." Naruto swallowed hard, his chest tightening with emotion. I never got to know you," he whispered. "I always wanted to hear you say that in person." Kushina smiled softly and shook her head. "I know, my love. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you in the way I wanted. But I've always been with you, Naruto. You've always carried me in your heart, even when you didn't realize it." A wave of warmth washed over Naruto as her words sank in. He felt like he was hearing her voice for the first time, really hearing it, not the words of his memory, but the true sound of her voice, the tone filled with love and care. "I've watched you grow, Naruto," she continued, her gaze unwavering. "And I know that life hasn't been easy for you. I know what it's like to carry the burden of loneliness. But you're stronger than anyone I've ever known. I see your heart, and I see how much you've done for others." Naruto felt a tear slip down his cheek. "But I still feel like I'm missing something, someone." He had always pushed it away, told himself that being Hokage was enough, but deep down, he knew the truth. There was a part of him that longed for something more, a connection. A love, someone who would understand him completely. Kushina's expression softened, and she took a step closer, her hands gently cupping his face. "Naruto, you're going to find someone who will love you the way you deserve. I don't know when or how, but I can feel it in my heart. You will find someone who truly understands you, someone who will stand by your side, no matter what. You'll be able to share your heart without fear." Naruto's eyes widened at her words. "But I've been so focused on protecting everyone. I don't even know how to let someone in, how to love without worrying about losing them." "I know it's hard," Kushina replied, her voice tender yet firm. "But you deserve happiness. You've always protected everyone else. Now it's time for you to live for yourself, too. Don't shut your heart off. Don't hide from the love that's waiting for you." Naruto felt a strange mix of emotions, hope, fear, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "I don't know if I can, Mom," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice raw. "I've been alone for so long, and I've been afraid of getting close to anyone." "You don't have to do it alone, Naruto," Kushina said with a smile, her hands gently brushing away the tears on his face. "You've always had people who care about you. You just have to trust them, and trust yourself." Naruto stood there, staring at her, the weight of her words settling deep within him. The thought of opening up to someone, of allowing someone into the space he had kept locked away for so long, was both terrifying and beautiful. But his mother's words filled him with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. It was as if the final pieces of his heart were coming together, and he realized that maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running from love. "I'll try," Naruto whispered, his voice hoarse. "I'll try to be open to it. I'll try to find the happiness you want for me." Kushina smiled, her eyes filled with affection. "I know you will, Naruto. You've always had the strength inside you. Just remember, you are never alone. I'm with you, always." And with that, she reached out to him one last time, her hands glowing brighter, her form beginning to fade into the light. Naruto stood still, feeling a warmth in his chest, as if a piece of her was always with him now. As her figure disappeared, he felt a sense of peace wash over him, a peace he hadn't known in years. He wasn't alone. Not really. When Naruto woke up, he felt different. The night had passed, and the soft light of dawn filtered into his room. But the lingering feeling of his mother's presence remained, like a soft whisper in his heart. He sat up in bed, his hands resting on his knees as he closed his eyes. The dream had felt so real, so vivid, that it was hard to believe it was just a dream. But the message was clear, he wasn't alone. And love, the kind he had been searching for, was waiting for him. Naruto smiled softly, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He wasn't sure how or when it would happen, but he knew one thing for certain, he would open his heart to the love his mother had always wanted him to find. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was finally ready. As the day went on, Naruto found himself reflecting on his dream, the words his mother had shared with him. He had always known he had a purpose, but now, he realized that part of that purpose was to live a life filled with love, not just for the village, but for himself too. With new resolve in his heart, Naruto stood up, determined to start taking the steps toward that new beginning. He wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear, his heart was open, and he was ready to let it lead him toward the happiness he had always deserved. He would find love. And this time, he wouldn't be afraid to embrace it. Chapter 3, The Unspoken. The days following his dream with Kushina were filled with a quiet, almost unsettling calm. Naruto found himself in a constant state of reflection, unable to shake the vivid memory of her words, her presence. It wasn't just the dream itself, it was the feeling that lingered afterward, like a piece of her had been left behind, echoing in his chest. He couldn't explain it, but it wasn't just her love he felt in that dream. It was something deeper, something that stirred emotions he hadn't known how to process before. At times, he would sit in the Hokage's office, staring at his desk and finding himself lost in thought, the parchment in front of him turning into a blur. Other times, he would find himself walking through the village, his mind wandering back to her. Kushina, his mother, yet somehow, his feelings for her had transformed into something far more complicated. He had spent his whole life carrying the idea of her as the mother he had lost, the source of all the love he had never received. But now, with every memory that surfaced, there was something else. A longing. An attraction. A connection that seemed to grow stronger each time he thought about her. It was confusing. One evening, Naruto found himself sitting on a bench near the Hokage monument, gazing up at the faces of the Hokages that lined the mountain. The village was peaceful, the night air cool and refreshing, but inside, his thoughts were a storm. He had always assumed that his mother's love would be the ultimate form of affection, that it would be pure and unconditional. And it was, of course. But there was something else, something that made his heart beat faster when he thought of her. His relationship with her had never been one of distance, he had never felt like an orphan, not in the sense that he had been deprived of her love. But now, in the wake of their dream meeting, something had shifted. He was struggling to reconcile the love of a son with the feelings that were beginning to evolve into something more intense, more personal. "What's wrong with me?" he muttered to himself, resting his head in his hands. A soft voice interrupted his troubled thoughts. "Still thinking about her, huh?" Naruto looked up to see Sakura standing a few feet away, her hands resting on her hips, a concerned look on her face. She had known him long enough to recognize when something was weighing heavily on him. "Yeah," he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I can't stop thinking about her, Sakura. About Mom. It's hard to explain." Sakura sat beside him, her gaze soft but attentive. "I can tell. Ever since that day, you've been distracted. Is it because of the letter she left you?" Naruto nodded slowly. "Yeah, the letter, but it's more than that. It's the dream, Sakura. It felt so real, like she was right there, talking to me like she never left. And she said I deserve happiness. She said I need to live for myself, to find someone who will understand me and stand by me." Sakura smiled gently, understanding the depth of his words. "That's a lot to take in, Naruto. I can see why it would be on your mind so much. But you should know, your mother is proud of you. She always was. And I think she just wants to see you find happiness." Naruto's hand gripped his chest. "I know she wants that for me. But, it's not just that, Sakura. There's this feeling I can't shake. I don't just miss her. It's like, I don't know. There's something else. It's confusing." Sakura furrowed her brows, trying to understand. "What do you mean?" Naruto hesitated, his words caught in his throat. He had never been one to shy away from his feelings, but this was different. This was something new, something that didn't fit with the relationship he had always envisioned with Kushina. I don't just feel like a son who's lost his mother. I feel like I'm drawn to her in a way that's deeper than that. I can't explain it, Sakura. I don't know if it's because I've been so lonely, or if it's something else. But when I think about her, it's not just maternal love I feel. It's something more. Something that scares me." Sakura's expression softened, but she was silent for a moment. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the turmoil that had taken root in his heart. It wasn't just guilt, it was confusion and fear, all wrapped up in the emotions of love and longing that Naruto had never truly understood. "You've always been the kind of person who feels everything so deeply, Naruto," she said finally, her voice quiet but comforting. "Maybe you're just processing everything all at once. After all, you've spent your whole life wanting that connection, wanting to know what it would have been like to have your mom with you. And then, in the dream, she gave you exactly what you've been searching for." Naruto nodded, his thoughts swirling. He had never thought about it like that. He had always wanted to know what it would feel like to be loved by her, to feel that connection. And now that he had experienced it, the feelings had blossomed in a way he hadn't expected. "I've always been alone, Sakura," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I've always told myself that being Hokage, that being the one to protect the village, was enough. But now I don't know. I'm starting to realize that it wasn't enough. I've spent my whole life thinking that love wasn't something I could have. And now, after everything with Mom, I don't know how to handle it. I don't even know if these feelings are real, or if I'm just fooling myself." Sakura placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with understanding. "You're not fooling yourself, Naruto. What you're feeling is real. But it's also complicated. Your feelings for her will always be tied to the love of a son for his mother. That won't change. But sometimes love can come in different forms, and the way you feel might be evolving because of everything you've been through. You're not just her son anymore. You're your own person. And sometimes that means that emotions can get muddled." Naruto looked at her, a faint glimmer of understanding beginning to form in his mind. "So, you're saying that I'm not crazy for feeling this way? That maybe it's natural?" "I think it's natural to feel conflicted," Sakura answered softly. "But that doesn't mean it's something you can just ignore. You have to take time to figure it out, Naruto. Take a step back and really think about what you want. Don't rush it, but don't run away from it either." Naruto looked at the horizon, his heart still heavy but his mind starting to clear. The village stretched out before him, peaceful and calm, and for a brief moment, he found himself imagining a different kind of life, one where he could have the family he always dreamed of. But there was still so much uncertainty, so much fear of what it all meant. "I guess I just need some time to think," he murmured. "That's all any of us need sometimes," Sakura said with a gentle smile. "Take your time. And remember, you're not alone. We're all here for you, Naruto. You've always had us, and you always will." Naruto smiled weakly, appreciating the support his friend offered. "Thanks, Sakura. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're my best friend, Naruto. I'll always be here." As Naruto sat there, staring at the village, the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, casting a golden light over everything. He wasn't sure where this strange journey of emotions would lead, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could face it. It was time to confront the truth of what he felt, not just for Kushina, but for himself. And somehow, he knew that whatever came next, he wouldn't have to face it alone. Chapter 4, Moments Shared. Days passed since Naruto's conversation with Sakura, and though the turmoil in his heart had not fully dissipated, there was a sense of clarity starting to form. He couldn't ignore the emotions that surged when he thought of Kushina, nor the complex feelings he had when he thought about her, not just as his mother but as someone much more. But something had shifted within him, a decision to explore these feelings without fear. He had always been the kind of person to rush headfirst into a challenge. This, he realized, was no different. It started with small moments, quiet and intimate, moments that stretched into long conversations. At first, it was nothing unusual, just two people spending time together, talking about their pasts and the paths that had shaped them. But the more they shared, the deeper their connection grew. They weren't just mother and son anymore, they were two souls intertwined, learning and discovering more about each other with every passing day. Naruto was sitting in the Hokage office late into the night, as usual. The moonlight streamed in through the window, casting long shadows across the room. He had grown used to the late nights, spending hours poring over reports, or thinking about the village's future. But tonight was different. He had spent the entire day with Kushina, and now, he couldn't shake the lingering thoughts from their conversation earlier that evening. Kushina had come to visit him at the office earlier, and they had spent hours talking. At first, it had been light-hearted, catching up about the simple things. Naruto had asked her about her own childhood, the things she had done when she was younger. She had laughed, her eyes lighting up as she recounted memories of her days in the village. "I was a troublemaker, you know," Kushina had said with a playful smirk, leaning against the desk. "I used to get in so much trouble at school, always fighting the boys. Your father always used to get after me for causing trouble." Naruto chuckled, the image of a younger, rebellious Kushina making him smile. "Sounds like you were pretty wild. I guess I get some of that from you." Kushina had raised an eyebrow, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You? Wild? You're the troublemaker now, aren't you, Hokage?" She teased, poking him in the ribs playfully. He grinned back. "I guess I am. But I didn't get into too much trouble, well, except for that time I painted the Hokage monument." "Oh, I remember that," Kushina said, her voice turning soft. "I saw the way you struggled, Naruto. All that pain you carried, and still, you kept going. I'm so proud of you." Her words struck a chord deep inside him. He had always heard people praise his efforts, but hearing it from her, it was different. It made him feel as if everything he had been through, every hardship, had led him to this point. And she, his mother, had been there for him all along. That night, after the conversation, Naruto couldn't help but reflect on how much his feelings for her had changed. His mother, who had once been an ideal, a dream, was now real in a way that made his heart ache. It wasn't the ache of longing, it was the ache of closeness. He didn't know what to make of it. The following days were filled with more of those quiet moments. It became a routine. Naruto would finish his work as Hokage and then meet with Kushina later in the evening. Sometimes, they would walk through the village together, talking about everything and nothing. The villagers, ever used to seeing Naruto, would wave at him as he walked with her, but there was an unspoken understanding that this was a different kind of moment, one that was uniquely his and hers. It was on one of these walks that the change in their dynamic became undeniable. Naruto had been walking beside Kushina, the cool evening air making the leaves rustle above them. The sky was painted with shades of pink and purple as the sun set, and everything around them felt serene. There was something comforting about these walks. Something calming, as though the world outside their small bubble didn't matter. Kushina glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "You've always had such strength, Naruto. I see it in your eyes, the same strength I saw in your father. It's more than just physical power, it's the will to protect, to keep moving forward no matter what." Naruto's eyes softened as he looked at her. "I learned that from you too, you know. You were always strong. Even when things got hard, you never gave up. That's one thing I always admired about you." Kushina smiled gently, but there was something else in her expression now, something more than just pride. It was a quiet tenderness that hung in the air, like an unspoken word, a connection neither of them had acknowledged before. They walked a little further, both of them lost in their thoughts. But it was in the silence between them that the chemistry that had been building for days became undeniable. The way their eyes met, the subtle touches as they passed each other, the quiet smiles they exchanged, it all spoke of something deeper than the familial bond they shared. At that moment, Kushina stopped walking, turning to face Naruto. Her eyes were soft, but there was a strength in them that seemed to pierce through the air. "Do you ever think about what's next for you, Naruto?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. He looked at her, puzzled. What do you mean? Your future, Kushina said, her tone holding a vulnerability that Naruto hadn't heard from her before. You've always been so focused on protecting everyone, and now you've become Hokage. But what about you, Naruto? What do you want? What makes you happy? Naruto blinked, her words surprising him. He had never really thought about it, not in the way she was asking. His whole life had been about protecting the village, fulfilling his promise to the people who believed in him. But what did he want? What did he need? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The truth was, he didn't have an answer, not yet. But there was one thing that kept coming to his mind, no matter how hard he tried to push it away. I don't know yet, he finally said, his voice soft. But I'm starting to think, maybe what I need is to live for myself a little more. Maybe it's time I start thinking about what makes me happy. Kushina's smile deepened, her eyes filled with understanding. I think you're closer to finding that than you realize. It was in that moment that Naruto realized just how much he had come to depend on her, how much he had come to need her. She had always been a source of comfort, but now, there was something more. Something undeniable. Before he could say anything else, Kushina took a step forward, her hand reaching out as if to touch his. The air between them felt charged, as though every second was stretching out in front of them, waiting for the moment they would confront the unspoken truth that had been growing between them. But before either of them could take the next step, a gust of wind stirred the leaves, and the moment passed. That night, as Naruto lay in his bed, the weight of their conversation lingered in his mind. He could still feel the warmth of her hand, the softness in her voice. He wanted to understand what was happening between them, but he was scared. Scared of what these feelings might mean, scared of where they might lead. Was it simply loneliness? Or was it something more profound? In the days to come, Naruto knew he would have to confront the growing intimacy between him and Kushina. But for now, he allowed himself the luxury of being confused, knowing that this connection was something he couldn't ignore. And perhaps, he thought, as he drifted to sleep that night, it was something he wasn't supposed to ignore. Chapter 5, The First Kiss. The moon hung high in the sky, its pale light casting soft shadows over the hidden leaf village. The streets were empty, the hustle and bustle of the day long gone, leaving behind a silence that felt almost sacred. It was in this peaceful stillness that Naruto found himself standing beside Kushina, outside the Hokage residence. The cool night air wrapped around them, but neither of them seemed to mind the chill. The weight of their shared moments had kept them warm in a way that nothing else could. They had been spending more time together recently, but tonight felt different. The usual playful banter, the light-hearted jokes, were absent. Instead, there was a quiet intensity that neither of them could shake off. They had both felt it, the tension that had slowly built between them, the unspoken connection that hung in the air whenever they were near each other. It was almost as if the universe itself had conspired to bring them to this point, where they could no longer deny what was growing between them. It's peaceful tonight, Naruto said quietly, breaking the silence. His voice was soft, as if the weight of the moment made even his usual boldness feel distant. Kushina smiled, though it wasn't as carefree as it usually was. It held something more, a vulnerability, a longing. She looked at him, her gaze soft and warm. Yeah, it's peaceful. Almost like the calm before a storm. Naruto met her eyes, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them seemed to hum with an electricity they couldn't ignore. There was so much unsaid between them, so many feelings that had gone unacknowledged, but neither of them seemed ready to break the silence. Not yet. Kushina took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. Her breath was steady, but Naruto could sense her heart racing, just like his. He had always been so sure of his emotions, but now, in front of her, everything seemed different. He had always thought of her as his mother, the one who had given him life and love, but now, now he couldn't separate the woman she had become from the woman he had loved in his heart all these years. His feelings for her had changed, evolved into something deeper, something he couldn't define. Naruto. Kushina's voice was barely a whisper, her breath warm against the cool night. I've never said this before, but I need you to know. You've always been the most important person to me. Naruto swallowed hard, his heart thumping in his chest. He had heard those words before, but tonight they carried a weight he wasn't used to. This was no longer just a mother's love. This was something more, something that transcended the boundaries he had once placed between them. I know, Mom, Naruto's voice cracked slightly, and he cleared his throat. I've always known. You've always been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it. But... Kushina took another step closer, her hand reaching out to rest gently on his. The touch was electric, like a spark had ignited between them, and they both felt it. Her fingers brushed against his skin, sending a jolt of warmth through his body. There was a tenderness in her touch that made his heart swell. But what, Naruto? She asked, her voice full of something that felt like hope. Like she was waiting for something. Naruto's pulse quickened, and he found himself lost in her gaze. He wanted to speak, to say the words that had been bubbling up in him for weeks, but the fear held him back. The fear that this feeling, the attraction, the connection, was something he shouldn't feel. That it was wrong. But it was too strong to ignore. Too real to dismiss. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them until there was only a breath separating them. The world around them seemed to fade away, the only thing left was the warmth of their presence, the unspoken desire that was thick in the air. Kushina's eyes fluttered shut as she tilted her head slightly, her lips parting ever so slightly, as if waiting for him to make the next move. Naruto could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him, but he couldn't pull away. His heart ached, but not from pain, it was from something else. Something that felt like the most natural thing in the world. The yearning for something he had tried to suppress for too long. His hand reached up, cupping her face gently, and the warmth of her skin under his touch made him feel like he was finally home. Without thinking, his lips found hers. It was soft at first, tentative, an exploration, a discovery. But the moment their lips met, something inside Naruto broke free, something that had been locked away for years. His heart raced, and all the doubts, all the questions, faded away. This was real. This was happening. It was raw, intense, and full of emotion, a culmination of everything they had been through, everything they had shared. For Kushina, the kiss was a lifetime in the making. It was the culmination of the love she had always felt for her son, but now, in a way she hadn't expected, it was the love of two souls who had finally found each other. She had watched him grow, seen the man he had become, and realized that he wasn't just her son anymore. He was someone she could see herself with, not in the way a mother should, but in a way that was deeper, more intimate, more profound. They pulled away slowly, both of them breathing heavily, their foreheads resting against each other. The world around them seemed to stand still, and all Naruto could feel was the warmth of her breath on his skin and the steady rhythm of their hearts beating together. Naruto's voice was barely a whisper when he finally spoke. Kushina. I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm feeling. But I can't deny it anymore. I can't keep pretending that what's between us is just normal. It's not. Kushina's eyes softened as she looked up at him, her expression filled with understanding. I know, Naruto. I've felt it too. And I don't want to pretend anymore either. There was a pause, a moment of clarity. Neither of them knew what the future held, but in that moment, they knew one thing for certain, whatever they were to each other, whatever this was that had begun to grow between them, it was real. And they weren't willing to walk away from it. The kiss had been the spark, but now they both felt the fire. Neither of them spoke for a long time, but no words were needed. They simply stood together, holding each other, letting the connection between them grow in the silence, knowing that this moment, this feeling, was something they would carry with them forever. And for the first time in a long time, Naruto felt like he had finally found what he had been searching for, not just in the village, but in his own heart. A love that was all his own. Chapter 6, Confessions. The evening after their first kiss, Naruto and Kushina found themselves sitting together in a quiet, secluded part of the village garden, where the soft glow of lanterns cast gentle shadows around them. The garden was a place of peace, a place where the worries of the world seemed distant and faint. Tonight, however, the air was thick with anticipation, as both of them knew that they needed to address the burgeoning feelings that had changed the nature of their relationship. As they sat side by side, the rustling leaves in the breeze seemed to echo the restlessness in their hearts. Kushina turned to Naruto, her expression serious, yet her eyes held a warmth that made him feel both nervous and comforted. "Naruto, there's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice steady but soft. "It's about how I feel, about you." Naruto nodded, his heart racing as he turned to face her fully. "I think I have some things to say too," he admitted, though his voice was hesitant. Kushina took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts before she spoke. "When I first held you as a baby, there was this immediate bond. It was more than just a mother's love for her son. It was as if my heart recognized you, not just as my child, but as someone very dear to me in a way that I couldn't fully understand at the time." She paused, searching his face for any sign of his thoughts. Naruto remained silent, listening intently, his eyes never leaving hers. "That feeling never faded, Naruto. It only grew stronger with every year, even after I was gone. When I saw you struggling, growing up without me, it pained me more than I can say. And when we were reunited, those feelings, they didn't feel like just maternal ones. They were deeper, tangled with everything I'd felt from the moment I first knew you." Naruto swallowed hard, his emotions swirling chaotically. "Mom, He struggled to find the right words, the weight of his own confession pressing heavily on him. "It's okay, Naruto," Kushina said gently, reaching out to place a reassuring hand on his. "You can tell me anything." Encouraged by her understanding, Naruto took a deep breath. "I've always felt this pull towards you, a connection that went beyond just being my mom. I didn't know what it was, and I tried to ignore it because I didn't think it was right. But after everything, feeling what I feel now, I can't deny it anymore." He looked at her earnestly, his blue eyes filled with a mix of confusion and certainty. "I love you, Kushina. And not just in the way a son loves his mother. It's something more, something I can't really explain. But it's there, and it's strong, and it's part of why I've been so confused." Kushina listened, her heart aching with love and sorrow. "Naruto, knowing this changes everything, but it also doesn't change how much I care about you. We need to figure out what this means for us, how we navigate these feelings responsibly. But please know, no matter what, I love you deeply, and that will never change." Their confessions hung in the air, a testament to the complex, uncharted waters they now found themselves in. Yet, despite the confusion and the potential consequences, there was also a sense of relief. The truth was out, no longer lurking in the shadows of their hearts, and they faced it together, united by a bond that defied simple definitions. As they sat there, the night drawing a veil around them, they both knew that the path ahead would be difficult. But they also knew they would explore it together, with honesty and care, no matter where it led. The tranquility of the garden, with its whispering leaves and soft lantern glow, seemed to promise that they would find their way through this, guided by the deep, unwavering love that had brought them to this moment. Chapter 7, The Wedding Proposal. The night was calm and still, a gentle breeze whispering through the trees. The hidden leaf village lay quiet beneath the vast expanse of the starry sky. Naruto and Kushina stood together in a secluded part of the village, the soft glow of lanterns illuminating their path. The moonlight bathed the landscape in silver, casting long shadows and painting the world in a peaceful, serene light. Naruto felt his heart race. The weight of everything he had come to realize, the feelings he had for Kushina, the life they had shared, and the future they might build together, was a lot to process. But tonight, under the stars, he knew that there was one thing he could no longer ignore. He was ready to speak from his heart. Kushina stood beside him, her expression gentle but knowing. She had sensed the change in him, felt it in every glance and every touch. Tonight, something felt different, something that held a weight far greater than anything they had experienced before. "Naruto," she said softly, turning toward him, her eyes filled with warmth and love. He smiled, his heart swelling at the sight of her. "Yeah, Mom?" She hesitated, as though weighing her words carefully. "I know we've been through a lot, and things aren't easy to understand. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will always be by your side." Naruto's chest tightened, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "I know, Kushina. I know you've always been there for me. But tonight, I need to tell you something important." Kushina looked at him with curiosity, her expression softening as she reached for his hand. "What is it?" Naruto took a deep breath, gathering the courage to speak the words he had been holding inside for so long. "I've spent my life trying to protect the village, trying to be the person everyone could rely on. But I've also realized that there's something I've neglected. And that's us. You and me." Kushina's eyes widened slightly, her hand tightening around his. "Naruto. I love you," he continued, his voice steady, though his heart was pounding. "You've been my everything. You've always believed in me, supported me, and made me feel like I wasn't alone. And now, after everything we've been through, I want to spend the rest of my life with you." A single tear slipped down Kushina's cheek as she looked at him, her heart swelling with pride and love. "Oh, Naruto. I don't know what to say." He smiled, his heart full. "You don't have to say anything. But I need you to know that I'm ready to take this step. To build something together. To protect you. To cherish you." The silence between them grew, the weight of their shared history pressing on them both. The moment felt suspended in time, like nothing in the world mattered except the two of them standing there, under the stars. Kushina's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." Naruto blinked, stunned. "What?" "Yes," she repeated, her voice more certain this time. "I'll be with you, Naruto. Always. I've always loved you, in ways I never thought I could love someone. And I will continue to love you, no matter what." With tears in his eyes, Naruto pulled her close, enveloping her in a warm embrace. They stood there for a long time, simply holding each other, as the stars above seemed to shine even brighter, reflecting the light of the love they had found in each other. And in that moment, both of them knew, this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would be filled with love, hope, and the promise of a future they would share together. Chapter 8, Adjusting to the Change. The weeks following Naruto and Kushina's heartfelt proposal were filled with quiet moments of joy, but they were not without their challenges. As the Hokage, Naruto had always been in the public eye, but now there was something else for the village to focus on, a bond between him and Kushina that, though rooted in love, raised eyebrows and sparked murmurs throughout the village. Naruto and Kushina found themselves in a delicate position. Their relationship, no matter how deep and genuine, was met with skepticism from many, particularly from those who couldn't immediately understand the complexities of their feelings. The weight of the village's judgment was not something Naruto was used to, and the situation left both of them unsure of how to proceed. One day, Naruto stood in the Hokage office, his hands clenched around a stack of papers. The door opened quietly, and in stepped Sakura, her expression serious. Naruto didn't need to look up to know she was concerned. "Naruto," Sakura began, her voice soft but firm, "there's something we need to talk about." He glanced up, noticing the worry in her eyes. "What's going on, Sakura?" She hesitated, clearly choosing her words carefully. I know you care about Kushina, and I've seen how much happiness she brings you, but some people in the village are talking. Naruto's heart sank, though he tried not to show it. Talking about what? Sakura walked over and sat down beside him, her expression filled with concern. It's the way things have progressed between you two. People are confused, Naruto. They don't understand how you could feel this way about her. Some of the older villagers are even questioning whether you should continue leading as Hokage. They're worried about what kind of example this sets. Naruto's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. He'd expected some resistance, but hearing it so directly from Sakura made the weight of the situation hit harder than he anticipated. I don't care about what other people think, Naruto replied firmly, his voice carrying the conviction he had always had when it came to protecting the people he loved. This is real, Sakura. I love her. And I'm not going to apologize for that. Sakura sighed, her voice softening. I know you do, Naruto. I can see that. But it's not just about you and Kushina. You have a responsibility to the village. People are starting to wonder if you're making decisions for the right reasons, if you're putting your personal feelings above what's best for everyone else. Naruto's shoulders slumped, the weight of her words pressing down on him. The thought of losing the village's support was something he had never considered. He had always put others first, even at the cost of his own happiness. But now, with his own heart tangled up in the complexities of his feelings for Kushina, he wasn't sure how to balance it all. I never wanted to hurt anyone, Naruto muttered, running a hand through his hair. But this is the person I want to be with. I can't change that. And I'm not going to let anyone make me feel like I shouldn't follow my heart. Sakura reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. I know, Naruto. And I want you to be happy. But just think about it, okay? I'll support you no matter what, but you need to be prepared for the reactions of the people you're trying to protect. Naruto nodded slowly, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts. He had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was different. This wasn't just about protecting the village, this was about protecting something personal, something deeply meaningful to him. Later that evening, as Naruto and Kushina walked together through the quiet streets of the village, the cool night air brushing against their skin, he turned to her with a serious expression. Kushina, there's something I need to tell you, Naruto began, his voice heavy with uncertainty. She stopped walking, her eyes immediately searching his face. What's wrong, Naruto? I'm worried about the village, he admitted. People are starting to question us. They don't understand our relationship, and it's affecting the way they see me as Hokage. I don't want to let the village down, but I don't want to lose you either. Kushina placed a reassuring hand on his. Naruto, we can't control what others think. All we can do is be honest about what we have. And if people can't accept it, then that's their problem, not ours. But it's not that simple, Naruto said, his tone more frustrated now. I've always fought for everyone. I've always made sacrifices for the village. And now, with you, I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions. Kushina looked at him with a mixture of love and understanding. You don't have to choose, Naruto. You can love and protect the village, but that doesn't mean you have to hide the truth of who you are or how you feel. You deserve to be happy, too. Naruto took a deep breath, his chest tightening. I know. But it's hard. I feel like I'm letting everyone down by wanting this, by wanting you. Kushina smiled softly, reaching up to touch his face. You're not letting anyone down, Naruto. People will come around. If they truly care about you, they'll see that your love for me doesn't make you any less of a Hokage. It makes you stronger, because you've found someone who understands and supports you. And that will make you a better leader in the end. Naruto's gaze softened, and he nodded. I just don't want to lose anyone's respect, you know? I've worked so hard to earn it. I know, Naruto. And that's why I'm here, she said with confidence, her voice unwavering. You don't have to do this alone. We'll face this together, as a team. Let the village see the truth of who we are, and if they don't accept it, then it's their loss. Naruto smiled, his heart lightening at her words. Thanks, Kushina. I really needed to hear that. Despite their shared determination, the path ahead was still fraught with challenges. As time passed, whispers persisted throughout the village. Some were supportive, some were confused, and others simply couldn't reconcile Naruto's position as Hokage with his relationship with Kushina. But with time, and with the strength of their bond, the village began to soften. Slowly but surely, Naruto's closest allies, Sakura, Kakashi, and others, came to terms with the reality of their relationship. They saw the genuine love that existed between Naruto and Kushina, and that love was impossible to ignore. One evening, after a long council meeting, Sakura approached Naruto and Kushina, a smile on her face. I've been thinking a lot about everything, she said, her tone sincere. And while it took me a while to understand, I want you both to know that I support you. You're both stronger together, and that's what matters. Kushina smiled warmly at her, and Naruto felt a wave of relief wash over him. Thank you, Sakura, he said. That means a lot to me. Kakashi, who had been silently listening nearby, also nodded in agreement. You both have my support, too, he added, his voice steady but filled with genuine affection. You've always had my trust, Naruto. And Kushina, I'm happy to see you bring him the happiness he deserves. It was a small victory, but it was enough to strengthen their resolve. With the support of their closest friends, Naruto and Kushina faced the challenges of their relationship with a renewed sense of confidence. Over time, the village began to accept what they had once struggled to understand. Naruto and Kushina's love, though unconventional in the eyes of some, proved to be a force that only strengthened their bond with the village. Through their shared dedication to the future of the village, and their commitment to each other, they earned the respect and trust of the people. And as the months passed, Naruto realized that the true test of leadership wasn't just about the decisions he made for the village, it was about being true to himself, and to the love that had blossomed in his heart. With Kushina by his side, he knew they could face anything, together. Chapter 9, A New Hokage's Challenge. The first few months of Naruto's tenure as Hokage had been nothing short of exhausting. The weight of the village's expectations, the constant stream of reports, and the endless meetings had drained him in ways he hadn't anticipated. But it wasn't just the work itself that made it difficult, it was the pressure that came with balancing his responsibilities to the village with the quieter, more personal moments he shared with Kushina. It had been a struggle at first. As much as he wanted to be with her, to enjoy the peace that her presence brought, his role as Hokage demanded more of him than he had ever imagined. There were days when he came home late, his shoulders slumped from hours of meetings, his mind clouded by the never-ending challenges of leadership. Kushina, ever understanding, always waited for him, her unwavering support a steady presence in his life. Even though their relationship had brought them both joy, it had also opened a new set of challenges, as the realities of his responsibilities collided with their growing bond. One evening, after a particularly long day, Naruto trudged into their shared home, his body weary. He had barely managed to finish reviewing the latest set of reports and had spent hours talking to the village council about the future of Konoha's infrastructure. His mind was still spinning, and he was ready to collapse. But as he stepped through the door, he was met with the familiar, comforting sight of Kushina, who had been waiting for him. The soft glow of the lanterns illuminated her face, and the warmth of their home made the weight of his duties feel just a little lighter. Kushina was sitting at the dining table, a small plate of food set aside for him. She looked up, a soft smile spreading across her face as she saw him enter. But there was something in her eyes, something that said she understood how hard his day had been. Long day? She asked gently, her voice soothing. Naruto sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. You could say that. I feel like I haven't had a moment to breathe, let alone spend time with you. There's just so much to do, and it never ends. Kushina nodded, standing to walk over to him. I know, Naruto. But you don't have to do it all alone. Her hand reached out, brushing his cheek, her touch soft but full of warmth. I'm here for you. Always. He closed his eyes for a moment, leaning into her touch. I don't know how you do it, Kushina. You've been so patient with me, even when I'm barely home, even when I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to take you for granted. You never do, she replied, her voice steady but tender. I understand what you're going through. You've always put others first, always carried the weight of the village on your shoulders. But you have to take care of yourself too, Naruto. I'm not going anywhere, and I'll be by your side through this. Together, we can figure it out. Her words were a balm to the tension that had been building in his chest. He looked at her with a mix of gratitude and exhaustion. It's just hard, you know? Being Hokage, trying to do everything right. Sometimes, I feel like I'm losing myself in all of it. Kushina smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. I see it, Naruto. But you can't let the village swallow you whole. You're not just Hokage, you're Naruto, and you're allowed to have moments of peace too. You're allowed to need me, to need time for us. Naruto exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing as he let her words sink in. I want that, Kushina. I want us. But I don't want to let the village down. I can't afford to be distracted when so many people rely on me. Kushina placed a hand on his chest, her touch firm but gentle. I'm not asking you to abandon your duties, Naruto. You've worked your whole life for this. But you need balance. You need to remember that you're not alone in this, I'm here, and we're in this together. Naruto smiled faintly, feeling the knot in his chest loosen. She always knew what to say, always knew how to bring him back to center. Her presence was a grounding force in his chaotic life, a reminder of what he was fighting for. They sat together at the table, the food in front of them long forgotten as they simply talked. The conversation flowed easily, about the village, the future, their plans, but also about small, everyday things. The sound of their laughter filled the room, and for a brief moment, Naruto forgot about the weight of his responsibilities. Kushina had a way of making him feel seen, of reminding him that he was allowed to live for himself as much as he lived for the village. She wasn't asking for more than he could give, she was asking him to take care of the parts of himself that he often neglected. And slowly, he began to realize that it was possible to have both, the love of the village and the love they shared, side by side. The next few days were no less demanding, but Naruto found himself approaching them with a new sense of balance. He took small breaks when he could, seeking refuge in the moments he shared with Kushina. She supported him quietly, understanding when he needed to be alone to work, but also knowing when to pull him away from his responsibilities, reminding him that his well-being was just as important. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their home, the village lights twinkling below them, Naruto took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Kushina, he began, his voice soft. About balance. And I think I've been too focused on trying to be perfect, on being the best Hokage I can be, without really thinking about the people around me. About us. Kushina smiled, her hand gently resting on his. It's not about perfection, Naruto. It's about doing the best you can, while also remembering that you deserve happiness. You've been giving so much of yourself to others, now it's time for you to give a little back to yourself. He turned to look at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. I don't know what I'd do without you, Kushina. You make me a better Hokage, a better person. She leaned in, her forehead resting gently against his. And you make me proud every single day. They sat in silence for a while, the steady rhythm of their breathing in sync with the soft whispers of the night. Despite the challenges they faced, despite the uncertainty that still lingered on the horizon, Naruto felt a quiet certainty in his heart. They would face it all together, side by side. And with that knowledge, the weight of his responsibilities seemed just a little lighter. In the weeks that followed, the village began to see the change in Naruto. Though he still dedicated himself fully to his work, he was learning to carve out time for the people who mattered most. The village, too, began to adjust to the new dynamic, seeing the strength in Naruto's leadership, and in his commitment to balance. Through it all, Naruto and Kushina's love only grew stronger, their shared moments becoming a steady anchor in the ever-changing tides of his role as Hokage. The challenge of leading the village was one he could face with determination and love, knowing that the greatest strength he had wasn't just his own, it was the unwavering support of the woman who had always been by his side. Chapter 10, A Glimpse of the Future. The sun was setting over the Hidden Leaf Village, casting a warm, golden hue over the landscape. The gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the trees, and the village, as always, was alive with the sounds of people finishing their day's work. From the Hokage office, Naruto looked out the window, his eyes drifting over the village he had sworn to protect. He had always known that his duty was to the people, but lately, there was something else occupying his mind, something that had nothing to do with his title or the challenges of leadership. Kushina entered the room quietly, her soft footsteps barely audible against the wooden floor. She had been working in the garden earlier, and there was still a faint smell of fresh earth in the air around her. Her presence always seemed to calm him, no matter what else was going on in his life. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly, walking up beside him and gazing out at the village as well. "Is everything okay?" Naruto sighed, his gaze still fixed on the village below. "Yeah. I've just been thinking a lot about the future lately." Kushina raised an eyebrow, a gentle smile playing at the corners of her lips. "The future, huh? That sounds serious." Naruto chuckled, glancing at her. "It is. I've spent so much of my life focusing on being Hokage, on taking care of the village. But now, with you by my side, I'm starting to think about what we want, you know? Not just me, not just the village. But us. What comes next for us?" Kushina's heart swelled at his words, and she reached out to take his hand. "I've been thinking about that too. We've been through so much, Naruto. The struggles, the sacrifices. But now it feels like we can finally look ahead, like we have the chance to create something peaceful, something of our own." Naruto turned to face her, his eyes filled with a softness that she had seen in him many times before but never quite like this. "I want to build that peaceful life with you, Kushina. A life where we don't have to worry about the battles, where we can just live freely, without all the fear and pain we've experienced. I want us to be happy. I want to start a family with you." Kushina's breath caught at the mention of a family. She had always dreamed of having children, of raising them in a world where they could experience the joy and love she had never had growing up. But with everything that had happened, with the uncertainty of the past, it had always felt like a distant dream. But now, with Naruto by her side, the possibility felt real. She smiled, her eyes glistening. "A family. I like the sound of that. I've thought about it too. About raising children who will grow up knowing the kind of love we share, knowing they're part of something bigger, something that has the potential for peace." Naruto squeezed her hand gently, his voice full of hope. "We've fought for peace, Kushina. We've been through so much to get to this point. I want our kids to know what it feels like to live in a world where they don't have to worry about wars or battles. Where they can grow up without the kind of loneliness we both experienced." Kushina's heart swelled with emotion, her thoughts drifting to the baby she had once held in her arms, the son she had loved so fiercely, even when she couldn't be there for him. And now, with Naruto by her side, she dreamed of the future they could create, together. "I want that too," she said softly. "I want to raise our children in a world full of love, with the understanding that no matter what happens, they're always safe, always cherished. And we'll be there for them, just like we've always been there for each other. Naruto smiled at her, a sense of peace settling over him. We will. We'll be there for them, for each other. I know we'll be great parents, Kushina. We've already shown how much we can love and protect the people who matter most. Kushina nodded, her eyes meeting his with a warmth that spoke of their shared dreams. We'll teach them everything we know. We'll show them the importance of kindness, of understanding. And we'll make sure they never feel the loneliness we did. They'll know that family means everything. Naruto took a deep breath, imagining the life they could have, a life without the shadows of the past, a life where they could simply love each other and their children, free from the struggles that had once defined them. I want that more than anything, Kushina. I want to build a family that's strong, that's united. A family that will carry on our legacy of love and peace. They stood together in silence for a moment, the weight of their conversation settling in, but it was a comfortable weight, a weight that was filled with hope, with the promise of a future they could share. Kushina rested her head on his shoulder, her voice soft but full of certainty. We'll have that, Naruto. We'll build it together. And no matter what challenges come our way, we'll face them as a family. I know we can. Naruto wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, and for the first time in a long while, he felt the weight of his responsibilities ease, if only for a moment. In Kushina's arms, in the dream they shared for the future, he found a kind of peace he had never known before. And as they stood there, looking out at the village below, both of them knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, united, strong, and full of love. Their journey had been long and filled with trials, but now, they could finally look forward to a new chapter, a chapter of hope, of happiness, and of family. Chapter 11, the New Year's arc begins. As the year drew to a close, the Hidden Leaf Village was brimming with excitement. Lanterns of all colors hung in the streets, casting soft, warm glows over the buildings, while the air was filled with the scent of freshly baked treats and the sound of distant laughter. It was a time of celebration, a time to reflect on the past and look ahead to the future. Naruto and Kushina had decided that this year's New Year's Eve celebration would be something special. After everything they had been through, the challenges, the victories, and the growth they had experienced together, they wanted to mark the beginning of the year with something that represented their love and their hopes for a peaceful future. It would be a night for the village to come together, but also a night for them to celebrate the new chapter they were starting in their lives. Kushina was busy in the kitchen, preparing food with the help of a few friends from the village. The smell of rice cakes, grilled fish, and sweet pastries filled the air, making Naruto's stomach growl in anticipation. He had spent the entire day helping with the decorations, hanging lanterns around the village square and ensuring that everything was ready for the evening. As the sun began to set, casting a brilliant orange glow over the village, Naruto took a moment to step outside and catch his breath. He looked up at the sky, thinking about the path that had brought him here. From the lonely child who had dreamed of becoming Hokage to the man he had become today, standing at the helm of the village he had fought so hard to protect, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. The night would mark a turning point, not just in the village's history, but in their own personal journey. It was the first New Year's Eve he would celebrate with Kushina by his side, and he felt an overwhelming sense of joy at the thought of the future they would build together. Kushina stepped out to join him, her eyes bright and full of love. Everything's coming together perfectly, she said, a soft smile on her lips. The village is going to have a wonderful time. Naruto smiled back, his heart swelling with pride. It's thanks to you. This whole celebration, everything we're doing, it's all for the future we're creating together. I couldn't have done it without you. Kushina's eyes softened as she stepped closer to him, her hand gently brushing against his. I'm just glad to be by your side, Naruto. We've been through so much, but now we can finally start living the way we've always wanted. A life filled with love, peace, and hope. Naruto looked at her, his gaze full of affection. Yeah. This New Year's Eve, I want to celebrate us. Celebrate how far we've come and how much we've learned. But most of all, I want to celebrate the future. A future that's full of promise, full of joy, and full of us. Kushina's heart fluttered at his words, and for a moment, she found herself overwhelmed by the depth of their connection. She had always believed in Naruto, in his dreams and his potential, but now, seeing him standing here, so strong, so determined, she felt like everything they had fought for was finally coming together. As the evening progressed, the village square filled with people, the air buzzing with excitement. Children ran around, their laughter ringing in the air, while the adults exchanged stories and enjoyed the food that had been prepared. The village's usual festive spirit was amplified this year, as everyone seemed to be celebrating more than just the start of a new year. They were celebrating the sense of unity and hope that had grown stronger over the last few years. Naruto and Kushina stood at the center of it all, watching the village come together. Naruto's heart was full as he took in the sights and sounds of the celebration. This was the world he had always dreamed of, one where people could live without fear, where peace wasn't just a distant hope but a living, breathing reality. As the clock neared midnight, Naruto and Kushina found a quiet spot away from the crowd, where they could watch the stars above them. The night was clear, and the village glowed warmly below, the soft light of the lanterns reflecting off the buildings. Ready for the countdown? Kushina asked, her voice playful but full of anticipation. Naruto grinned, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Ready. This is our moment. The start of something new. Kushina took his hand, and they stood together, watching the village below. The festivities continued in the background, but in that moment, it was just the two of them. The noise of the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the warmth of their bond. As the final seconds of the year ticked away, they shared a smile, their hearts in perfect harmony. 10, 9, 8. The countdown echoed through the village. Kushina's eyes locked with Naruto's, her heart racing as the seconds dwindled down. This wasn't just a new year, it was a new chapter in their lives. A chapter where they would face the future together, hand in hand. 3, 2, 1. The village erupted in cheers as fireworks lit up the sky, painting the night in brilliant colors. The sounds of laughter and celebration filled the air, but Naruto and Kushina were lost in each other's gaze. For a moment, everything else faded away, and it felt as if the entire world was celebrating with them. Kushina leaned in, her lips meeting Naruto's in a soft, meaningful kiss. It was a kiss that spoke of all they had been through, of all they had overcome, and of everything they still had ahead of them. A kiss that carried the weight of their dreams and the promise of a future filled with love and happiness. When they finally pulled away, their foreheads resting gently against one another, Naruto whispered, "Happy New Year, Kushina. This is just the beginning." She smiled, her heart full. "Happy New Year, Naruto. Together, we'll make it the best one yet." As the fireworks continued to light up the sky, Naruto and Kushina stood together, watching the world around them. This was the future they had always dreamed of. And as the new year began, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, united in love and hope. Chapter 12, New Year's Eve. The village square was alive with joy, the air buzzing with excitement as the hidden leaf prepared to ring in the new year. Lanterns flickered softly in the streets, casting a warm glow over the crowd. The sounds of laughter, music, and conversation filled the air as families and friends gathered together to celebrate the arrival of a new year, one full of promise and hope. However, amidst the festivities, Naruto and Kushina had stolen away from the crowd for a brief, quiet moment of their own. They walked hand in hand through the quiet village paths, the gentle hum of the celebration still echoing in the distance. The stars above them shone brightly, as though even the night sky was joining in the celebration. "It's almost midnight," Naruto said softly, glancing at the sky. He could hear the distant countdown already beginning, the village's excitement building with each passing second. But in this moment it was just the two of them, no responsibilities, no worries, just a shared sense of peace. Kushina smiled, looking up at him with affection. I can't believe how far we've come, Naruto. The years have passed, and yet, here we are, ready to start a new chapter. They stopped by a small, quiet pond nestled on the outskirts of the village, the surface of the water reflecting the soft glow of the lanterns nearby. The world around them seemed distant, the only sounds now the gentle rustle of leaves in the cool night breeze. Naruto turned to face her, his heart swelling with emotion. We've been through so much, Kushina. You've been with me every step of the way. I don't know if I could have done it without you. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. I want you to know something I've been thinking about for a while now. Kushina raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. What is it? Naruto's gaze softened as he looked at her. His eyes full of sincerity. I love you. I always have. And no matter what happens, I'm going to love you every day of my life. I've spent so much of my life alone, fighting to protect everyone, but you've always been there. You gave me a family, a place in this world, and now, I want to make sure that I'm there for you in the same way. I promise that I'll always protect you, always cherish you, and always put you first. Kushina's heart swelled with emotion at his words. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she reached up to touch his cheek gently. Naruto, you've already given me so much. You've given me a chance to see you grow, to watch you become the Hokage you always dreamed of being. And now, you're giving me your heart, your love. I can't ask for anything more. She smiled through the tears that threatened to fall. I promise to stand by you always, to support you in everything you do. We've both fought for this moment, for the life we want to build. And now that we're here, I want you to know that I'm yours. Every part of me, now and forever. Their hands intertwined, a silent promise between them that they would face whatever came their way, side by side. The weight of their shared history, the struggles, the sacrifices, the triumphs, was heavy, but in that moment, it felt like it had all led them to this. To each other. The distant sound of the countdown echoed through the village, drawing their attention. The crowd's excitement was growing, and the moment for the new year was nearly upon them. But before they returned to the festivities, Naruto and Kushina shared one last private moment together, standing in the quiet by the pond. Are you ready for the new year? Naruto asked, his voice soft but full of hope. Kushina looked up at him, her heart full. More than ever. With you, I feel like we can do anything. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8, the sound of the village rang through the air, growing louder with each second. The moment was drawing closer. Kushina smiled, her gaze locked on Naruto's, as the final seconds ticked away. She reached up and cupped his face in her hands, her touch gentle and warm. I love you, Naruto, she whispered, her voice full of all the emotion she had carried with her for so long. And I always will. Naruto leaned in, his forehead resting gently against hers. I love you too, Kushina. And I'll make sure our future is everything we've dreamed of. 3, 2, 1. The village erupted in cheers, fireworks lighting up the sky, painting it in brilliant colors. But for Naruto and Kushina, the world was quiet. In that moment, it was just the two of them, everything else fading away as they shared their first kiss of the new year. It was slow, tender, and full of the love that had been growing between them for so long. As they pulled away, their eyes met, filled with a deep understanding. They had made it through the hardest parts of their lives, and now they were standing on the threshold of something new, something full of promise. The sound of the village celebration faded into the background as Naruto and Kushina stood there, side by side, looking out at the horizon, knowing that together, they could face whatever the new year, and the future, had in store. Happy New Year, Kushina," Naruto whispered, his voice full of emotion. "Happy New Year, Naruto," she replied, her heart full. "Let's make it the best one yet." And as the fireworks continued to light up the sky, Naruto and Kushina stood together, their hands tightly entwined, their hearts beating in sync as they faced the future, together. Chapter 13, The Calm Before the Storm. The village of Konoha buzzed with excitement. The streets were alive with laughter, music, and the clink of glasses. The celebration for the new year was in full swing, and Naruto and Kushina had finally managed to steal a few hours to themselves amidst the festivities. They danced together, their smiles wide and carefree, their laughter blending with the sounds of the village. The weight of their responsibilities felt distant, as if for one perfect evening, they could forget about everything else and simply be. But even as the fireworks lit up the night sky, there was an unsettling feeling in the air. It was a quiet unease, one that only those who had seen the darker side of the world could feel, a sense that the peace they had worked so hard to create was fragile, and something was on the horizon, waiting to challenge it. Naruto couldn't shake the feeling. The festivities had helped him forget, if only for a little while, the pressures that came with being Hokage. But now, as he stood beside Kushina, his gaze drifting over the celebrations, a sense of foreboding settled in his chest. Kushina noticed the change in him almost immediately. She had been watching him for months now, how the weight of his position never fully left him. He was always thinking, always planning for the next challenge. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, pulling him out of his thoughts. "Naruto," she said quietly, her voice laced with concern. "What's on your mind?" He turned to her, his expression serious. "I don't know, Kushina. It's just, something doesn't feel right. The village is peaceful now, and we're all together, but I can't shake the feeling that something's coming. Something big." Kushina studied his face, seeing the familiar tension in his eyes. She knew that look. It was the same look he had worn all those years ago when he first started his journey as a young ninja. The weight of the world, of the village, always pulling at him. "Naruto, you've done everything you can to protect this village," she said, her voice firm yet soothing. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Just like we always have." Naruto nodded, appreciating her support more than words could say. But he knew it wasn't just about their bond. There was something else out there, a threat they hadn't yet seen, but one that could undo everything they had fought for. Days passed, and the village's peace remained unbroken, but Naruto's unease only grew. It wasn't until a late afternoon meeting that he learned the truth of what was coming. A messenger arrived from one of Konoha's border villages, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. "Hokage-sama," the messenger said breathlessly, dropping to his knees in front of Naruto. "A new group has been spotted at the outskirts of the Land of Fire. They're well armed, and we believe they may be planning an attack." Naruto stood, his eyes narrowing with a mix of concern and anger. "Who are they?" he demanded, his voice low but laced with authority. The messenger hesitated, then spoke in a hushed tone. "They're a rogue faction of shinobi. We think they might be former members of various villages, including some from the Land of Sound. They've been gathering in secret for months, and we've just gotten confirmation that they're preparing for something big." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation settled over everyone. Naruto clenched his fists. They had just started to enjoy a brief respite from the constant battles, and now this? The peace they had fought for, the dream he had of a future where Konoha was safe, felt more distant than ever. Kushina stepped forward, her voice calm and steady as always. "Naruto," she said, her gaze unwavering. "We knew this peace wouldn't last forever. But we've faced threats before, and we've always come out stronger. We need to prepare for what's ahead." Naruto turned to her, his gaze softening. "I know. And I won't let them tear apart what we've worked so hard to protect. But this is different, Kushina. These people aren't just rogue shinobi, they're skilled, organized. This could be more than just another skirmish. Kushina reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, offering the support he needed. Then we'll be ready. The village believes in you, Naruto. And I believe in you. You're not alone in this fight. Naruto met her gaze, his heart steadying at her words. He had always relied on the strength of the people around him, and now, more than ever, he needed to lean on that strength. The coming battle would test him, test all of them, but he wouldn't face it alone. The next few days were filled with preparations. The village's ninja were put on high alert, and the council convened to discuss strategy. Naruto, though exhausted from the constant flow of information, didn't falter in his leadership. He coordinated with Kakashi, Sakura, and the other trusted members of his inner circle, making sure that every possible defense was in place. They would not allow this group of rogue shinobi to threaten the peace they had built. Kushina, as always, was by his side. While Naruto handled the logistical side of the defense, she worked with the village's medical teams, ensuring they were ready to tend to the wounded. She also worked alongside Naruto to plan tactical strategies. Her knowledge of combat and her sharp instincts were invaluable. They were a team, stronger together than apart, and Naruto relied on her more than ever as the danger loomed closer. Late one night, as they stood together looking over the village's defenses, Naruto spoke again of his doubts. What if we're not ready for this, Kushina? What if this group is too strong for us to handle? Kushina turned to him, her eyes filled with unwavering confidence. We've been through worse, Naruto. This is a challenge, but it's one we can overcome. We have the strength of the village behind us. We have each other. That's all we need. Naruto looked at her, his heart swelling with both gratitude and love. You're right. We've been through too much to let something like this break us now. The village, once again, stood on the brink of battle. But this time, Naruto felt something different. With Kushina by his side, with the support of his friends and allies, he knew that they could face anything. The storm was coming, but together, they would face it head-on. The night before the battle, as the moon rose high over the village, Naruto and Kushina shared one last quiet moment together before the storm. The wind whispered softly through the trees, and the night felt peaceful, almost as if the world was holding its breath. I know we'll face the danger tomorrow, Naruto said quietly, his voice full of resolve. But I need you to know, no matter what happens, I'm not backing down. I will protect this village. I will protect you. Kushina smiled, her eyes filled with warmth and strength. And I'll be with you, every step of the way. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. As they stood there, the calm before the storm, their hearts beat in sync. Tomorrow would bring a battle, but tonight, they were united in their shared commitment, to protect the peace they had fought for and to ensure that their love, their family, and their village would endure whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 14, Uniting Forces. The days leading up to the inevitable battle were tense. The rogue faction of shinobi, their strength and numbers growing by the day, now posed a real and immediate threat to the village of Konoha. Despite the readiness of their defenses, Naruto and Kushina knew that this would be no ordinary conflict. They would need to rally every ally they had, every resource at their disposal, to ensure that Konoha remained strong and protected. The sun was beginning to set on the day of their final preparations, casting long shadows over the village as the last few logistical arrangements were being made. Naruto stood on the Hokage monument, overlooking the village he had promised to protect. His heart was heavy, knowing the battle was fast approaching. But there was no turning back. This was the moment that would define not only his leadership but the future of Konoha. Kushina joined him shortly, walking up the path with a calm yet determined look on her face. Her presence always gave him a sense of peace, grounding him in the midst of chaos. Everything's in place? She asked, her voice steady but with an edge of concern. Naruto nodded, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. We've prepared as much as we can. But we both know this is going to be more than just a skirmish. The enemy is organized. This isn't just some random attack, this is an invasion. We'll need every ally we can get. Kushina placed a hand on his arm, her touch reassuring. And we'll get them. We've built strong relationships, Naruto. They'll come. You've led the village to this point, and your allies trust you. Naruto looked at her, the weight of her words settling in. I couldn't do this without you, Kushina. You've always been my strength, more than you know. She smiled softly, but her eyes never left his. And I always will be. You're not in this alone, Naruto. We'll face this together, with the village and all of our allies. The call to arms was sent out swiftly. Messenger birds were dispatched to the allied villages, and soon, messages were being sent to all corners of the world Naruto had helped to build peace with. The nations that once fought alongside Konoha now stood ready to offer their support. The land of earth, the land of wind, the land of lightning, and even the land of water had all sent their word. Konoha was not alone. It was not just political alliances that stood behind Naruto. It was the friendships, the bonds formed through years of struggle, and the trust earned by those who knew Naruto not just as the Hokage but as a man of honor and integrity. Naruto and Kushina, working tirelessly together, coordinated the response. While Naruto communicated with the leaders of the allied nations, Kushina reached out to their closest friends and allies, Sakura, Kakashi, and the other Jonin, ensuring that the village's defenses were bolstered. Each leader was given a specific task, a role to play in the battle, and each knew that their unity would be their greatest strength. The streets of Konoha were filled with busy preparations. Shinobi were being assigned to various squads, supplies were being moved into strategic positions, and the medical teams were organized and ready. The village was alive with purpose, each person focused on the task at hand. As the evening wore on, the last of the preparations were completed, and Naruto and Kushina found themselves standing together once more. The quiet between them was heavy, but the warmth of their connection filled the space. This was the calm before the storm, and they had no illusions about the challenge that lay ahead. Naruto turned to her, his voice low but steady. Kushina, when this is over, we'll finally be able to have the peace we've always dreamed of. But first, we have to make sure that Konoha survives this. She nodded, understanding the weight of his words. We will, Naruto. We'll protect everything we've worked for. A gentle breeze ruffled their hair as they stood side by side, their resolve unshaken. Together, they would face whatever came. The night passed quickly, and before they knew it, dawn broke over Konoha. The sun rose, casting a soft light over the village, which now stood ready for battle. Shinobi from all over the world, allies of Konoha, had arrived. The villagers were gathered in their respective positions, waiting for the call to arms. The sound of footsteps echoed through the streets as the first of the allied forces marched into position. From the land of earth came sturdy, battle-hardened shinobi, their faces grim but determined. From the land of wind, swift and agile warriors, their eyes sharp, ready to move at a moment's notice. And from the land of lightning, strong, resilient fighters who had long stood by Konoha's side. Naruto stood in the center of it all, flanked by Kushina, Kakashi, Sakura, and the others. The weight of the moment was not lost on him. This battle would not only determine the future of Konoha but also the strength of the bonds that had been forged over decades of war, peace, and compromise. Kushina turned to Naruto, her voice unwavering. We've brought them all together. Now it's time to lead them. This is our moment, Naruto. He nodded, his heart steady. This is our moment, Kushina. We fight not just for Konoha, but for everything we believe in. For the peace we've worked so hard to build. Kushina gave him a final, reassuring smile before they turned to face the army, their hearts united in their shared purpose. As the leader of Konoha, Naruto stepped forward, his voice carrying over the gathered forces. Shinobi of Konoha, and our allies from all the lands, today we stand together. We are not just fighting for our homes, but for the future, for the peace we've all fought for. Together, we will defend Konoha. Together, we will protect the world we've built. This is the moment we prove that our bonds are stronger than any threat that dares to challenge us. The roar of the crowd echoed across the village square. A mighty cheer that reverberated through the streets. The allied forces were ready. The stage was set. As the battle began, the villagers stood side by side with their allies, their hearts filled with the strength of their unity. Naruto and Kushina's bond was not just emotional, it was a bond forged in the fires of battle, in the shared struggle for peace and a better future. Together, they led the charge, unwavering, as the storm gathered on the horizon. Chapter 15, A Moment of Peace. The air was still, the silence hanging over Konoha like a blanket after the storm had passed. The battle was over. The rogue faction, once a threat looming on the horizon, had been defeated. Naruto, Kushina, and their allies had fought with everything they had, and now, in the aftermath, the village stood victorious. But with the victory came exhaustion, a tiredness that settled deep into their bones, the kind that only a hard-fought battle could bring. The sounds of the battlefield had been replaced by the soft hum of recovery and healing. The cries of the wounded had been silenced, and the world seemed to pause in recognition of the peace that had been fought for and won. Naruto stood at the edge of the Hokage monument, looking down at the village below. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over Konoha, the colors of the sky stretching from orange to pink to purple. The village, now at peace, seemed to breathe in the evening air, quiet and serene, as though it too was recovering from the battle. He felt a hand slip into his. Looking down, he saw Kushina standing beside him, her eyes reflecting the calm of the moment. She had been with him through every challenge, every battle, but now, in this stillness, they both felt the weight of what they had just accomplished. "It's hard to believe it's over," Naruto said softly, his voice tinged with the exhaustion of the past few days. Kushina gave him a gentle smile, her hand squeezing his. "It's over, and you did it. You saved the village, Naruto. You protected everyone. You've always carried the burden of leadership, but now you've earned a moment of peace." Naruto let out a quiet laugh, but it was filled with a deep sense of relief. "We did it together, Kushina. All of us. The village, our allies, and you. I couldn't have done it without you." Kushina's heart swelled at his words. She had always known that Naruto's strength came from his heart, but seeing him in the aftermath of the battle, knowing how much weight he carried, filled her with pride. "And I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else. You fought for this peace, Naruto. Now it's time to live in it." They stood together in silence for a few more moments, just taking in the view, the peaceful village that stretched out below them. The sounds of people starting to rebuild, the soft chatter of villagers gathering to celebrate their hard-earned peace, filled the air. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a moment that Naruto and Kushina would hold onto for the rest of their lives. The following day was simple. It was the kind of day that felt like a gift, an opportunity to breathe, to rest, and to appreciate everything they had fought for. Naruto and Kushina spent the day walking through the village, taking in the familiar sights they had missed during the chaos of battle. The streets were lined with vendors selling food, children laughing as they played, and the air felt lighter than it had in months. As they walked side by side, their fingers intertwined, Naruto couldn't help but feel grateful for this peace. He looked at Kushina, her presence beside him more than just comforting, it was a reminder of everything they had overcome, everything they had built together. "I never thought I'd get to have a day like this," Naruto said, his voice thoughtful. "A day without worrying about the next battle. Without thinking about what could go wrong. Just a day to live." Kushina looked at him with a soft smile. "We've earned it, Naruto. You've earned it. We've been through so much together, and now we have the chance to just be. To be happy. To have the life we've always wanted. Naruto nodded, his heart full as he watched the people around them, peaceful. Content. This was the future he had always dreamed of, one where Konoha was safe, and where the people he loved didn't have to worry about the constant threats that had once shadowed their lives. They stopped by the river, where a small group of children were playing. One of the children spotted them and waved excitedly. Naruto smiled back and waved, watching the children run around without a care in the world. Do you think they'll ever understand what it took to get here? Naruto asked, his gaze following the children as they played. I mean, they'll grow up with peace, without the kind of fears we had. I just wonder if they'll ever truly know how hard we fought for it. Kushina's gaze softened as she looked at the children, then back at Naruto. They'll know. Maybe not in the way we do, but they'll grow up knowing that this peace was hard-won. And that's all we can hope for, knowing that we gave them the world they deserve. Naruto smiled at her words, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Yeah. You're right. I guess that's all we can ask for. They sat together by the river, watching the sunset as the village slowly settled into the quiet rhythm of peace. It was a time for reflection, for remembering what they had fought for, and for appreciating the simple moments that made life worth living. The warmth of the day lingered, and as the stars began to appear in the night sky, Naruto and Kushina stood together, their hands still entwined. To the future, Naruto said quietly, his voice filled with hope. Kushina turned to him, her smile warm and full of love. To the future, she repeated, her heart full of everything they had shared and everything that was yet to come. And in that moment, as they looked out over the village they had protected and the life they had built, they knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Their bond, their love, was unbreakable. The peace they had fought for was not just a fleeting moment, it was the beginning of the life they had always dreamed of, and now, they could finally live it. Chapter 16, Family and Home. The days in Konoha felt calmer now. With the village safe, the wounds of past battles beginning to heal, and peace restored, Naruto and Kushina finally had the time and space to focus on the future in a way they never had before. And the future, as they both now knew, was about to take a wonderful turn. The news that Kushina was expecting their first child had transformed their lives in ways they never could have anticipated. It had been a few weeks since they had received the joyful news, but the excitement had not faded. If anything, it had only grown stronger with each passing day. Their home, once just a place of rest after long days of duty, was now filled with something new, an energy, a warmth, a love that radiated from every corner. They had begun preparing for the arrival of their baby, and the anticipation in the air was palpable. The thought of becoming parents, of creating a family together, brought both excitement and a sense of responsibility, but above all, it filled their hearts with overwhelming love. Naruto sat at the dining table, his hands idly tracing the rim of his cup as he looked out the window. The view of the village from their home was peaceful, the streets calm, but his mind was far from still. He had always dreamed of becoming Hokage, but now, his dreams had expanded. This was a new chapter, one where he and Kushina would raise a child together, a new life to love and protect. Kushina entered the room, her expression soft but bright. She was carrying a few small baby clothes, her hands gently folding the soft fabric. She smiled at him as she set them down on the table. I can't believe it, she said, her voice full of wonder. We're really going to be parents, Naruto. Naruto smiled, standing up to walk over to her. He gently cupped her face in his hands, his heart swelling with affection. I know, he said, his voice tender. It feels so real now. Every time I think about it, I don't know, I get this feeling in my chest. Like we're about to start something amazing. Something bigger than anything we've ever done before. Kushina's eyes softened as she placed her hand over his, feeling the warmth of his touch. We are, she said quietly. This is the next step for us. I've spent so many years dreaming about having a family, and now that it's happening, it feels like everything is falling into place." They shared a quiet moment, simply taking in the reality of the life they were about to build together. The thought of a child, of their child, was a gift neither of them had ever fully allowed themselves to imagine until now. And yet, with every passing day, it felt more and more like the natural next step in the journey they had taken together. The days that followed were filled with small preparations, the kind that brought both excitement and reflection. Naruto and Kushina spent hours together talking about names for their child, sharing their hopes and dreams for the little one they were about to welcome into the world. One evening, as they sat together in their living room, surrounded by soft lighting and the quiet hum of the village outside, they began to talk about what kind of parents they wanted to be. "I've been thinking a lot about what kind of father I want to be," Naruto said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "I know I've made mistakes, but I want to be the kind of dad who's always there. I want to teach them everything I know, about strength, about kindness, about protecting the people you love. I want them to know that no matter what happens, I'll always be there for them." Kushina smiled, her heart swelling at his words. She could see the passion in his eyes, the same passion that had driven him to be the Hokage, the same passion that had fueled him throughout his life. She reached out, gently placing her hand over his. "You will be," she said softly. "I know you will. And I'll be right there with you. I want to be the kind of mother who teaches them love, who shows them the importance of compassion and understanding. I want them to grow up knowing that no matter what, they are always supported, always cared for. We'll give them a home full of love." Naruto leaned in, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "We're going to give them everything we never had, aren't we?" Kushina nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Yes, we are. Everything we never had, and so much more. We'll be the parents they need, the parents who will show them that they can always be who they are, no matter what." The air between them was thick with the weight of their words, their hearts full of hopes and promises for the future. For so long, they had been fighting for peace, for the village, for each other. Now, they were fighting for something even more precious, a new life, a family to love and protect. As the days went on, the anticipation continued to grow. The village began to prepare for the arrival of Naruto and Kushina's child, with the villagers offering their support, and many of Naruto's closest friends, Kakashi, Sakura, and others, offering their help in any way they could. There was a sense of unity, of shared excitement, as everyone rallied behind Naruto and Kushina during this special time. One afternoon, while they were organizing baby clothes and preparing the nursery, Naruto turned to Kushina, his face filled with both humor and excitement. "What about names?" he asked. "Have you thought about what we're going to call them?" Kushina laughed softly, a smile tugging at her lips. "I have a few ideas, but I want us to decide together." Naruto scratched his chin, deep in thought. "Well, I think we should give them a name that reflects both of us. Something strong, something meaningful. Maybe something like Hiroshi. It means generous, which I think is perfect, don't you think?" Kushina's eyes lit up at the idea. "I like that. It's perfect. Generosity is something I want our child to have. To be kind to others, just like you've always been." They continued discussing names, sharing their ideas and dreams for their child's future. It was a conversation that seemed to stretch on forever, filled with laughter and love, as they imagined what their little one would be like. But as the conversation continued, it was clear that what mattered most wasn't the name they would choose, it was the life they would give their child. A life full of love, protection, and everything they had both longed for but never fully had. Together, they would create a home, a family, where their child could grow up feeling safe, cherished, and supported. As they finished setting up the nursery, Naruto stood back and looked at everything they had prepared. It was simple, but it was perfect. The soft colors, the warm light, the little crib that stood in the corner, each piece of the room felt like a small, hopeful step into the future. Kushina stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm. "This is it," she said quietly, her voice full of love and anticipation. "This is the beginning of something beautiful." Naruto looked at her, his heart full of gratitude and love. "We're ready for this, Kushina. Together, we're ready." They stood there, hand in hand, looking at the nursery they had created, knowing that their journey, this new chapter, had only just begun. And whatever the future held, they would face it as a family, with love as their foundation. Chapter 17, The Birth of a New Hope. The days leading up to the birth had been filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, as both Naruto and Kushina eagerly awaited the arrival of their child. The village buzzed with anticipation, and every friend, ally, and villager shared in the excitement, offering support in small ways, from preparing meals to sharing their joy and well wishes. Konoha was alive with a sense of unity, as if the village itself was waiting for the new generation to be born. But now, as the first signs of labor began, the world seemed to slow down. The calm before the storm had arrived. Kushina and Naruto had prepared for this moment for months, and yet, neither of them could have been fully ready for what was about to unfold. The air was thick with anticipation, but also with love. It was late in the evening when Kushina felt the first sharp contraction. She had been resting in their bedroom, her hand resting on her swollen belly, feeling the quiet movements of their baby. But now, the baby was moving in a different way, more urgently, signaling that the time had come. "Naruto," Kushina gasped, reaching out to him, her voice shaking with the excitement and intensity of the moment. "It's time." Naruto was instantly at her side, his eyes wide but filled with determination. He had been through battles, fought enemies, and faced countless challenges, but nothing in his life had prepared him for this moment. This moment where he would become a father. "I've got you, Kushina," he said, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of nerves. "We're ready for this. Together." Kushina gave him a reassuring smile, even as the pain of the contractions tightened around her. She had always known that she could count on Naruto in every moment of her life, but now more than ever, she felt the deep bond that had brought them together. The moment of transition from 2 to 3 would mark the beginning of an entirely new chapter for them both. The couple quickly made their way to the Konoha medical ward, where Sakura and the rest of the medical ninjas were waiting, ready for the arrival of the new member of their family. Hours passed in a blur of anticipation, pain, and relief. Naruto stayed by Kushina's side, holding her hand, speaking words of encouragement, and doing everything he could to ease her through the process. The room was filled with quiet murmurs of medical staff, but it was Kushina's voice, strong, yet trembling, that filled the air as she pushed through the pain, determined to bring their child into the world. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cry of their newborn baby echoed through the room. Kushina's tears fell freely as she gazed at the tiny, squirming infant in her arms. Naruto's heart swelled in his chest as he looked at the small, perfect face of their child. He couldn't find words. He was overcome with emotion, feeling a love deeper than anything he had ever known. Their child, a new member of their family, was here, and it was the beginning of a future full of hope. "It's a boy," Sakura said with a soft smile, her voice full of warmth as she gently cleaned the baby. "He's perfect." Naruto leaned in close, his eyes never leaving the baby in Kushina's arms. "A son, our son," he whispered, awe in his voice. Kushina looked up at him, her own tears shining in her eyes. "He's ours, Naruto. We did it. We gave him life. He's going to have a bright future." The room was filled with the soft sounds of the baby's breathing, a peaceful contrast to the chaos of the day. In that moment, nothing else mattered. The world outside, the village, the battles, the struggles, was distant, and all that was important was the little life in Kushina's arms. Word of the birth spread quickly through Konoha. The villagers, who had eagerly awaited this moment, celebrated with joy and excitement. It wasn't just the birth of a child, it was the birth of a new generation, the continuation of the Uzumaki legacy, and the promise of a bright future. Later that evening, the village gathered in the streets, their hearts united in celebration. Lanterns were lit, fireworks painted the sky in brilliant colors, and people from all walks of life came together to mark the occasion. Naruto and Kushina stood together, holding their newborn son, surrounded by their friends and allies. "I never thought I'd feel this way," Naruto said quietly to Kushina, his voice filled with awe as he gazed down at their son. This is everything. This is what we fought for." Kushina smiled, her heart full. "Yes, it is. And we're going to give him the life we never had, the life we always dreamed of." Naruto's gaze shifted to the people gathered around them, Sakura, Kakashi, and the other members of the village who had stood by his side through every battle, every victory, and every loss. And now, they were here, celebrating the beginning of something new. "We're going to be great parents, Kushina," Naruto said with a quiet confidence. "We'll make sure he grows up in a world where he can be himself, where he can live without fear. This is our chance to give him everything." Kushina's eyes softened as she looked at their son, her heart swelling with love and hope. "We will, Naruto. We'll give him everything." That night, after the celebration had died down and the village settled into the quiet of the evening, Naruto and Kushina stood together in the nursery, looking down at their sleeping son. The little crib was bathed in soft moonlight, the peaceful sound of their child's breathing filling the room. As they stood together, side by side, looking down at the new life they had brought into the world, they knew that this was just the beginning. Their son represented everything they had fought for, everything they had worked toward. He was a symbol of hope, of love, and of the future they had dreamed of. "I'm so proud of you, Naruto," Kushina whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "You've made me the happiest woman alive. And now we have a family, a future, and a life full of love." Naruto leaned in, kissing her gently on the forehead, his heart full of gratitude and love. "I'm proud of us, Kushina. Together, we've built something beautiful. And I promise, we'll do everything we can to give him the life he deserves." The room was quiet, the world outside still and peaceful. And as they stood there, holding each other close, they knew that the future was bright, because they had created a family, one built on love, hope, and the promise of a better tomorrow. Their journey, as parents, had just begun. Chapter 18, The First Steps. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Their son, whom they had named Hiroshi, was growing fast. The little bundle of joy that had once fit so easily in their arms was now filling their home with laughter, tears, and the endless energy that only a child could bring. The first few months had been a whirlwind, as both Naruto and Kushina navigated the challenges of parenthood. For Naruto, it was a world of new emotions. As the Hokage, he had been accustomed to dealing with the weight of the village on his shoulders, making life or death decisions for the greater good. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the kind of responsibility that came with being a father. Hiroshi's innocent gaze, his tiny hands, and his soft giggles had a way of making all of the worries of the world seem distant. But just as quickly, the exhaustion and challenges of parenting would creep up on him, often leaving him feeling overwhelmed. Kushina, too, had faced her own challenges, though her maternal instincts were strong. She had always known she would be a loving mother, but the reality of sleepless nights, teething pains, and constant attention to their son had tested her in ways she hadn't anticipated. There were days when the stress and frustration seemed overwhelming, but each time, they leaned on each other for strength. Their bond, already so strong, grew even deeper as they navigated this new chapter of their lives. One afternoon, Kushina and Naruto were sitting together in the living room, Hiroshi between them on a small blanket, playing with a few toys. The baby was just starting to crawl, his tiny hands reaching out in excitement as he scooted forward. Naruto watched with a proud smile on his face, but there was a flicker of concern in his eyes. "I think he's getting ready to walk, don't you?" he said, his voice filled with awe. "He's moving pretty fast these days." Kushina smiled warmly at their son, her heart full. "He is. It won't be long before he's running around the house causing trouble. Are we ready for that?" Naruto laughed, shaking his head. "I don't know if we'll ever be fully ready. But we'll figure it out." Kushina chuckled and reached out to gently scoop Hiroshi into her arms. He giggled, his little hands grasping at her shirt as he snuggled into her chest. "It's incredible how fast they grow. Sometimes, I wish I could keep him small forever." Naruto sat next to her, his hand brushing against hers. "Yeah, it's like we blinked, and now he's almost walking. I wish we could pause time, just for a little bit. Just to savor these moments." But despite their wish for time to slow down, life had a way of moving forward. Hiroshi's first words weren't far off, and they could already see the beginnings of a determined little personality emerging in him. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of frustration when Hiroshi cried for no apparent reason or when he refused to sleep. But there were also moments of pure joy, the first time he giggled at something Naruto did, the first time he clutched onto his father's finger, and the first time he crawled toward Kushina with a bright, toothless grin. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned a soft shade of pink and purple, Naruto and Kushina stood outside in the garden, watching Hiroshi toddle around the small yard. He had taken a few hesitant steps, leaning heavily on a wooden chair to support himself, but now, with a look of fierce determination in his eyes, he was ready to take his first unassisted steps. "I think he's going to do it," Naruto said, his voice full of excitement and wonder. "This is it, Kushina. Our little guy is taking his first steps." Kushina stood beside him, her hand on his arm, her heart swelling with pride. "He's so determined," she whispered, watching Hiroshi carefully as he took a few shaky steps forward, his little hands reaching out toward his parents. "Come on, Hiroshi. You can do it," Naruto called, his voice full of encouragement. Hiroshi looked up at his parents, his eyes focused as if he could sense the excitement and love radiating from them. Then, with a big grin on his face, he pushed himself up and took 2 wobbly steps before he tumbled forward into his mother's arms. Kushina caught him easily, laughing softly as she held him close. "You did it, Hiroshi. You took your first steps." Naruto kneeled beside them, his eyes shining with tears of joy. "That was amazing, little guy. You're growing up so fast." Kushina looked at him, her heart full. "He's not the only one growing up, you know. We're both learning and growing, too." Naruto's smile softened as he looked at his family, the two of them, standing together, and their son in his arms. "Yeah. This whole journey has been a huge learning experience. But I'm glad we're doing it together." Kushina nodded, her heart echoing the same sentiment. "We make a great team, Naruto. And we'll keep growing together. As parents, as partners, as a family." The weeks that followed were filled with both joy and exhaustion. Their home had become a place of constant motion. Hiroshi's first words came sooner than expected, his first attempts at running turned into small triumphs, and his curiosity about the world around him seemed to grow each day. The laughter of their family echoed through the walls, and though there were still moments of frustration and fatigue, there was an undeniable sense of fulfillment that came with watching their child grow. Naruto and Kushina found strength in each other. The late-night feedings, the early morning wake-ups, the temper tantrums that came with teething, all of it was a test of their patience and resilience. But through every challenge, they leaned on one another, their bond stronger than ever. One evening, after Hiroshi had finally fallen asleep, Naruto and Kushina sat together in the living room, the soft light of the lanterns casting a warm glow over the room. Kushina rested her head on Naruto's shoulder, and for a moment, they just sat in silence, listening to the quiet sounds of the night. do you ever think about how far we've come? Naruto asked quietly, his voice full of wonder. Kushina smiled softly, her hand finding his. Every day. From the little orphan who dreamed of becoming Hokage to the man who has built a family and a future. We've come a long way. Naruto squeezed her hand, his heart full of gratitude. I never imagined this life. But now that we have it, I can't imagine it any other way. Kushina smiled, lifting her head to meet his gaze. Me neither, Naruto. Me neither. They sat together, watching the moon rise in the quiet sky, the world outside still and peaceful. The challenges of parenthood were far from over, but in that moment, they knew that they had everything they needed, each other, their love, and the new family they had built together. Chapter 19, Reflections. The day was quiet, the sun shining softly over the village as it entered the late afternoon. The streets of Konoha were filled with the usual sounds of life, children laughing, vendors calling out their goods, the distant chatter of friends meeting in the town square. But for Naruto and Kushina, this was a day unlike any other. It had been a year since they had vowed to spend their lives together, since they had stood before their closest friends and allies, promising to face the future hand in hand. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden hues over the village, Naruto and Kushina found themselves alone in the garden of their home. It was a peaceful evening, the warm breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. The garden, which they had tended to together, now stood as a symbol of everything they had built, a peaceful life, a family, and a future full of hope. Kushina leaned against the railing, her gaze soft as she watched the sunset. It had been a whirlwind of a year, one filled with joy, exhaustion, challenges, and triumphs. And yet, as she stood there with Naruto beside her, her heart swelled with gratitude for everything they had. Naruto, sensing her quiet reflection, stood next to her. He didn't say anything at first, just stood in comfortable silence, taking in the beauty of the evening. But soon, he spoke, his voice low and full of warmth. It's hard to believe it's been a whole year, he said, his eyes on the horizon. It feels like just yesterday we were making our vows, surrounded by everyone we care about. Kushina smiled, turning to look at him. I know. Time goes by faster than we realize. And yet, when I look at how far we've come, everything we've been through, it feels like we've lived a lifetime together. Naruto chuckled softly. I guess we have. We've been through more than most people ever will, but every bit of it has brought us to this moment. Kushina's smile softened, and she took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. I wouldn't trade any of it, Naruto. Not a single moment. Every struggle, every battle, it was all worth it, because we're here, together. Our love, everything we've built, it's what matters most. Naruto squeezed her hand gently. His heart full. He looked at her with a mixture of admiration and love, the depth of his feelings for her growing stronger with each passing day. We've been through so much, Kushina, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The pain, the loneliness, all the things that separated us for so long. But we've come through it all. And now, we have this, our family, our future. It's everything I ever wanted and more. Kushina's eyes glistened with emotion as she looked up at him. And we're going to keep building on it. Together. We've faced down so much, and I know we're going to keep facing whatever life throws our way. Because as long as we have each other, we can handle anything. Naruto nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. I'll always be by your side, Kushina. Through everything. You and Hiroshi, you're my everything. I've spent my whole life fighting for peace, for a better future. But now, my fight is for you, for our family. To make sure that the life we have is everything we dreamed of. They stood there for a long moment, the weight of their shared history and the hope for their future heavy in the air. The village around them was peaceful, and for the first time in a long while, they allowed themselves to simply be in the moment. No more battles, no more responsibilities, just the two of them, reflecting on everything they had accomplished and everything they still had to look forward to. Later that evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Naruto and Kushina sat down at the dinner table. A small candle flickered between them, casting a soft glow over the room. They had spent the evening reflecting on their past, talking about their hopes for the future, and cherishing the quiet joy of being together. Kushina smiled as she looked across the table at Naruto. "Do you remember our wedding day? How nervous you were." Naruto laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I was a nervous wreck. I never thought I'd be standing there, pledging my life to someone, especially after everything I went through. I thought I'd be alone forever. But then you were there, and everything changed. It was like everything I had been fighting for, all the struggles, they all made sense in that moment. Because I had you by my side." Kushina's heart swelled at his words, her smile softening. "And I was so proud of you. You were more than just the Hokage that day. You were the man I had always believed in, the man I knew would always be there for me. You made me feel loved in a way I never thought possible. I knew then that this was where I belonged, by your side, no matter what." Naruto's smile widened as he reached across the table to take her hand. "We've been through so much together, and I wouldn't change a thing. We've both come so far, and now, we're not just building a future for ourselves, but for Hiroshi. For our family. We've made something beautiful." Kushina nodded, her eyes shining. "We've made everything we ever wanted. And we're going to keep making it better. I'm so grateful, Naruto. For you. For Hiroshi. For everything." As the night deepened, and the quiet of the village surrounded them, Naruto and Kushina shared a quiet dinner together. There was a sense of peace in their hearts, a deep knowing that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. Their love had been tested, and it had proven strong. The bond they shared, not just as partners but as parents and as a family, was unbreakable. Later that night, as they stood in their garden once more, looking up at the stars above, Naruto turned to Kushina, his heart full of love. 1 year, Kushina. It feels like we've come so far in just 1 year. But I know the best is yet to come." Kushina leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I feel the same way. We've already built so much, but I know we're just getting started. Together, we can face anything." Naruto wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. "Together, we can build a future full of love, hope, and peace. And that's exactly what we're going to do." They stood together under the stars, a quiet promise passing between them. The future was still unfolding, but one thing was certain, they would walk through it together. Hand in hand, just as they always had. And with that, they embraced the quiet, knowing that this was only the beginning of the life they would continue to build, one filled with love, joy, and all the possibilities the future held. Chapter 20, Forever Together. The sun was setting on another peaceful evening in Konoha, casting warm golden hues over the village. The streets, once filled with the sounds of battle and the urgency of conflict, were now tranquil, alive with the hum of everyday life. The children played in the streets, the older generation gathered in the market, and the air carried a quiet sense of contentment. Naruto stood at the Hokage monument, looking out over the village he had sworn to protect. The wind brushed through his hair, the light from the setting sun warming his face. His eyes scanned the horizon, his heart calm, a deep peace settling in him that he had not known in years. His life had been filled with challenges, struggles, and battles, but now, as he stood in this moment, he felt a sense of completeness, a sense that the journey he had taken was leading him to exactly where he needed to be. Beside him, Kushina stood in quiet reflection, her presence as comforting as it had always been. She had stood by his side through every trial, and as they both looked over the village they had fought for, she smiled gently, her hand slipping into his. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she asked softly, her voice full of warmth. Naruto glanced at her, his heart swelling with love. Yeah. It's peaceful. We've worked so hard for this. Kushina's gaze softened as she looked at him. We've earned this peace, Naruto. After everything we've been through, we've finally built the life we dreamed of. A life where we can simply be. Naruto squeezed her hand gently, his thumb brushing over her fingers. You've been by my side through everything, Kushina. I never could have gotten here without you. Her smile deepened, her eyes filled with the same unwavering love they had always shared. We've always been a team, Naruto. From the beginning, when we first met, we've built everything together. And now, we've built a family, a home, a future. Their son, Hiroshi, was playing nearby, chasing after a butterfly in the garden they had tended to together. The sight of him, laughing, carefree, and full of life, filled both Naruto and Kushina with a profound sense of gratitude. This was their reward, the life they had fought for. They had come through so much together, and now, they had a family to cherish, a future to nurture. We've given him everything we never had, Naruto said quietly, his gaze drifting to their son. A future without fear, without pain. A world where he can be who he is, with the love and support he deserves. Kushina's heart swelled at his words. Yes. We've given him everything. And we'll continue to give him everything, just like we've always done. He'll grow up in a world of peace, surrounded by love. Naruto turned to look at her, his voice filled with certainty. And no matter what happens, no matter what comes next, we'll always be together. We've built this, and we'll protect it. For Hiroshi, for us, forever. Kushina smiled, her hand resting on his cheek as she looked into his eyes. Forever, she echoed softly. Together. We've come so far, Naruto. And no matter what the future holds, I know we'll face it side by side. The village around them continued to glow in the soft evening light, a symbol of the peace they had fought for and the family they had built. And in that moment, standing together, holding hands, Naruto and Kushina knew that no matter what challenges the future might bring, their love would endure. They had weathered the storms, and they would continue to face whatever came their way with unwavering strength, knowing that they would always have each other. The world around them was quiet, peaceful, and full of hope, the same hope they had always carried, the same hope they now passed on to their son, to the next generation. They had found their place in this world, and together, they would keep building the future they had always dreamed of. Forever together. The end. The end to my story. Happy New Year.